Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me call the meeting to order of our spring quarterly meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. My name is Evan Cope, and I chair the commission, and I want to take an opportunity, first of all, to welcome everybody here in person who is in person. I can just tell you, personally speaking, it is really nice to see everybody face-to-face and in person again, and look forward to having meetings in person again going forward. Our first item of business is to take the attendance, and so we will call the roll. If you are participating by telephone, and we do have two commissioners who are participating by phone, if you would please remember to state your location and whether or not there is anybody else in the room with you who is listening to the meeting. So I guess, Madam Secretary, with that, if you would please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Here.
Commissioner Dishner. Here. Commissioner Hassler.
Here.
Commissioner Coben. Here. Commissioner Moser.
Here, and I'm alone in my office.
Commissioner Scarlett.
Here.
Commissioner Stafford.
Here.
Commissioner Watson.
Here.
Commissioner Wharton.
Here.
Commissioner Winton. Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison. Comptroller Mumpower. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda, and unless there are any changes or exceptions, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion, Secretary Hargett. Is there a second? Commissioner Stafford, and okay, good. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hassler.
Aye.
Commissioner Coben.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser.
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett. Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Watson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairman, you have 11 ayes.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our January 28th meeting, and I'm happy to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Move approval. Commissioner Dishner, second. Commissioner Swafford. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hassler.
Aye.
Commissioner Coben.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser.
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Watson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairman, you have 11 ayes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. And Commissioner Scarlett, I apologize for calling you Commissioner Swafford. I'm not sure where that came from, but that's definitely not your name, so I apologize for that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the chairman's report, which I will now deliver. I first want to recognize our student member, Dawson Hassler. Dawson, good to see you here. This is Dawson's, unfortunately, it's his last meeting with us, and he has brought such a valuable perspective to our meetings, as all of our student members do. And I think it is really important that we always remember that we do have a student perspective here, and that perspective is just as valuable as any other perspective that the rest of us bring to this commission. Fortunately, though, for us, Dawson will not be far away. He'll be working for Senator Paul Bailey just across the street. Dawson, really thank you for everything you've done for the commission, and we really look forward to working with you in the future while you work for Senator Bailey. So thank you.
Can we give Dawson the opportunity to make some remarks?
Yeah, Dawson, would you like to speech? Yeah, and then we'll clap.
Then we'll clap.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. Since I've been here, the whole commission, all THEX staff, y'all just been great and really welcome me with open arms. And you know, it's pretty nerve-wracking sometimes speaking in front of everyone here. But I hope that I've done a good job at trying to be a voice for the students, and I hope that the next commission, student commission, will do that as well. So, thank y'all.
Thank you, Dawson. The month of May represents a time of great celebration for higher education. It is graduation season in our state, and likewise across the nation. After months, years, or in some cases decades of hard work and dedication, students around our state are lining up to walk across the stage and receive their diplomas. It is the most rewarding part of the work that we do here at THEC, to watch students and families gather to celebrate the great accomplishments that accompany hard work. As a commission, graduation season is the why of every meeting we host, every program we approve, and every policy we implement, always with the focus on helping every student receive their degrees and know that great opportunities await them. I'd like to take this moment to congratulate the graduating class of 2021, a class that has endured one of the strangest, if not hardest, periods of higher education, and they've all come out on the other side better for it. Congratulations to each and every one of you, especially our very own Commissioner Hassler, who graduated from Tennessee Tech in December. So congratulations for that. Graduation season also fills me with a sense of hope, not only for these students and their families, but also for our state. Each year, Tennessee's public institutions award some 60,000 credentials to students who have demonstrated mastery in their fields. The awards vary widely, from workforce-ready credentials like certificates in welding or mechatronics to associate's and bachelor's degrees that promise to deliver the next generation of teachers and engineers, to graduate degrees that provide Tennessee with a new class of doctors, lawyers, and entrepreneurs. The training opportunities our institutions offer are innumerable and continue to grow to meet the workforce demands of tomorrow. Tennessee higher education does a little bit of everything, and all of it at a high level and a low cost. Also recognize the graduation season for Tennessee high school students is quickly approaching, if it has not already occurred. Many of these graduates will be entering our higher education institutions in just a short few months, with hopes for their futures and ours. It is both our honor and our duty as a commission to continue to improve the Tennessee higher education enterprise for these students and the many others who will turn to our institutions for career training and scholarship in the future. I am really excited to say that our agenda today offers great opportunities to fulfill our mission and to continue improvement on behalf of Tennessee students. We will hear about our innovative new partnership between East Tennessee State University and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. This is a really exciting program. This program is targeting underserved students in Hamilton County and will allow them to complete an expedited bachelor's degree in computing. Our agenda also includes the setting of binding tuition ranges for our institutions for the 2021-2022 academic year. This policy tool is one of the ways we can ensure that students receive the very best education at the lowest possible cost that our state can offer. With our action today, we continue to deliver on our promise to make higher education in Tennessee the most affordable in the Southeast. Finally, we have a packed program approval schedule with 5 new programs coming before the Commission today. Our work in managing this process ensures that Tennesseans have access to the training opportunities they need while limiting the potential for duplicative efforts among institutions. I look forward to hearing more about these programs and the impact they will have on our students and on the communities that they serve. As you can tell, we have a wealth of items to cover, all with meaningful implications for our state's higher education system. I'm eager to spend the next few hours with my colleagues here working to continue creating high-quality, low-cost higher education for Tennessee students and families, and to ensure the success of the next generation of Tennessee college graduates. And with that, I'll call on Dr. House to deliver her report.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
this is Comptroller Jason Mumpower. I just wanted to let you know I dialed in. Thank you.
Thank you, Comptroller Mumpower. It's nice to have you on board.
Good morning, Chairman Cope, members, audience who are looking at my back, and for that I apologize. It's very nice to be here today. It's very nice for us all to be together in person. I have a number of updates to present to the board, and obviously, of course, welcome any comments or questions about any of this. So the first 120 days in this role have been exceptional. They have been fast. They have been very legislatively oriented. And something that we have all really rallied around is this idea of forward momentum. So with a change in leadership, we discussed this in January, there's always a risk for course to change or progress to slow, and my commitment to you all and to the group behind me is that that will not be the case, and I've made that commitment repeatedly to many constituencies. So we are moving forward in the service of students, in the service of our state. As we continue to think about a lot of the programmatic work, which I'll speak about in a moment, that we do here at THEC, we are focusing intentionally on subgroups of students who are not often or always served in the ways that help them to be the most successful. We continue to focus on adults. We continue to focus on students of color, veterans, low-income students through the programmatic work that we do here at THEC. That has not changed, and that will continue to grow. As we work with the administration and we work with the legislature, thinking about what types of degrees do we need to produce to support the workforce locally, regionally, at the city level, at the county level. How do these needs really translate in this pipeline from higher education to the workforce? So not only, to Chairman Cope's comments, have we produced 60,000 graduates, so many degrees this past year, we really need to continue this discussion about what degrees are most useful for what purpose, and how can we encourage students to take advantage of the best opportunities for them. We have all made the joke about 100 times that nobody graduates from THEC. I will work on my jokes for the July meeting, but I'm going to make the same joke again, which is nobody graduates from THEC. But everything we do, and I said this in front of many of our legislative colleagues this session, everything we do keeps students at the center. Every program we approve, every policy we approve or don't approve, keeps students at the center. So I just wanted to present to you all for the first time these 4 tenets that are really driving me, driving our team, as has been the case in the past, though perhaps not articulated as such, as we continue to work for our students, for our institutions, for our state. Everybody is very tired of talking about COVID, so I will do this briefly. I imagine everybody's tired about talking about COVID. As we think about the role THEC has played over the past 14 months, I would invite you to look at the second bullet point here. THEC has really worked very hard as a convener, as a conduit of information, translating and presenting information from the Department of Health, from TEMA, from other state agencies, to our institutions, to our students, such that each institution can make a decision that's right for their campus, for their students, for their communities. THEC has at no point been in the business of issuing any kind of mandate, telling institutions what they should and should not do related to masking, testing, whatever, really just making sure each institution has the information they need to make the best decision for their campus, as I said, and we will continue to do that as we enter into the summer term, the fall term in particular. I would be remiss if I did not again recognize Mitch Curry, who is going to be very upset that I did so, who has really been the star of the COVID response from the THEC side. If anyone wants to give him an honorary MPH, he deserves it, because he really has been at the forefront of everything THEC has done for our campuses related to COVID. So I'm not going to turn around, but I know he's behind me, so Mitch, thank you so much. As we think about the lessons learned from this year, 2 big ones come to mind, and I'll only speak about these briefly because I think we've touched on them before. And many of my colleagues behind me who are actually on the ground at the institutions can speak about this much more eloquently than I. But the transition to online learning had some successes and had some challenges. There were many lessons learned about the best ways to do that type of delivery of coursework. Also, Stephen and I, back in October, Dr. Gentile and I, back in October, which feels like 100 years ago, convened a group of people to talk about that last sub-bullet point there. What are some updates that have been made, that could be made, in light of the lessons we've learned from COVID? As we think about processes on campuses, what is paper-based that could be made electronic? What are some of the processes that would require a student to come to campus that needed to be modified because students were not coming to campus? Just in the spirit of what can be done to really keep students at the center when it comes to some of those non-academic processes on campus. Many of you have seen this slide before. There remains a lot to be done, and some challenges that we knew students were facing were brought into much sharper focus in light of COVID. The first 2, I think we've all heard before. Access to broadband, particularly in our rural communities, access to technology in all of our communities. We have all heard the anecdote about the student who during COVID could not go to campus. They were sitting in their car in a McDonald's parking lot attempting to do coursework on their cell phone because they did not have broadband access or technology access in their home, in their community, wherever, such to do something other than that. So we have known that this is a challenge. COVID really brought that into sharper focus. Something we heard throughout the fall when we visited many campuses to see all the campuses. We visited most campuses to see how the fall term had gone in person. We did some meetings virtually. But what we heard uniformly, irrespective of the type of institution, the size of institution, was the toll that this past year or these past 14 months took on students' mental health, faculty and staff's mental health. So nobody really knew what we were getting into in March of 2020. But as this public health situation went on, it became much more detrimental to the public health of everyone on our the mental health, of everyone on our campuses. So something to keep in mind as well, how to best support institutions, staff, and faculty to support themselves, each other, as well as the students campus by campus. So much work remains given the lessons that we've learned. Something that was a resonating theme throughout the past 120 days was a robust discussion about facilities and capital, and I can only imagine the faces that are being made behind me. So some of this conversation was because of the discussion about online learning. So because we're doing so much more online, what does that mean for facilities? But it's really much more broad than that. As we think about the physical footprints of higher education, the building of buildings, and how that needs to look, an architect I am not, the architects might be behind me, so I don't dare to speak on their behalf, but what are best practices in design, in planning, to make sure our campuses are efficient, they meet the needs of everyone on the campuses, but also thinking about what we have learned from all of the working from home that we have all done. So Patty and Paul, who are our team's architects, have worked with the Society for College and University Planning, that's what SCUP is, to deliver really, really intensive professional development as recently as this week, and then prior to that a couple weeks ago, to work with our facilities teams on campuses, to work with some of the academic folks on campuses to really align this discussion about what does a physical footprint need to look like. You will all hear more about that between now and November, but in November we will bring before you the capital list, as we always do, focusing on renovations and demolition this year rather than new construction. That is based on feedback we've received from the General Assembly, from the Governor's Office, as well as many of our campus partners. So much more to come on that. A brief note about internal operations. I won't spend too much time here, but we do have a handful of new hires. Again, that's that second bullet. We've made a few hires in the Veterans Division to really bolster the work that they do. We have some exciting new hires coming on in academic affairs and the college access team. I won't name names just yet, but we really are thinking about the critical functions that THEC does for students and how to continue to bolster those areas. We will be returning to work in a hybrid manner later this summer. So we are convening the entire team a week from today to have this discussion in much more detail, and I won't have it in detail now. But the idea is, given the lessons that we've learned over the past 14 months about efficiencies working from home, but also efficiencies and the necessity for being in person sometimes, we will implement a hybrid schedule, 2 or 3 days in, 2 or 3 days home for our team as a floor. Anybody who wants to come in 5 days a week can do so, but we're going to experiment with a hybrid setting, as I know many other agencies and many other industries and employers are doing as well. So we'll see how that goes, but that's the plan for our return to work strategy. Very brief updates about 3 buckets of initiatives. Very cool work, as always, going on in the adult learner space. I have spoken before once or twice about the Reconnect to Workforce initiative. This is a partnership with the Department of Labor, working with those Tennesseans who have been filing for unemployment since the existence, I guess, of COVID, since COVID came into the picture, working with these Tennesseans to re-engage them or engage them for the first time with higher ed. I know the unemployment conversation is changing. We don't need to talk about that now, but what we have been able to do is successfully work with over 2,000 unemployment claimants to get them back engaged with higher education. So while the number of employment claimants is much, much larger than that, we are very pleased to see that even though situations are fluid, people may not have the capacity, even if their job situation has changed, they still may not have the capacity to enroll in higher ed right now in the midst of all of this. But we've had over 2,000 people take us up on that offer to engage with Reconnect. Something I don't think we've talked too much about in this space is the corrections work. Working very closely with the administration, our adult learner team is working with the Department of Corrections as well to bring Reconnect navigation services to 8 correctional facilities across the state. So far, we have about 700 folks engaged. We're working very closely with TVR, and the idea is when someone is no longer incarcerated and they are out in what is referred to as the free world, they are engaged in higher education as well. So not only providing opportunities while they're incarcerated, when they are out, continuing that support. That is work that's a little bit unsung. It continues to evolve, and it was a little bit on pause during COVID for perhaps obvious reasons, but really re-engaging with that work now and really continue to be very excited about it. As we think about subgroups of students, so adult learners and those who are incarcerated clearly are two subgroups of students. As we think about our students of color as well, I've presented the same slide before, showing that there are, and we've seen this data before as a commission, that there are huge gaps in the completion rates, the graduation rates between white students and students of color, particularly male students. So this is not a one institution issue. This is not a one sector issue. This is a state of Tennessee issue. So Jeffrey and Julie, I know, are behind me, Dr. Roberts and Dr. Norfleet. They have been wonderful in facilitating this work. This task force, so this work is led by a task force, led by Jeffrey and Julie. The task force met a couple weeks ago to do a really deep dive into the data in this space. They'll meet again in early June to talk more about best practices campus by campus. So while this is a statewide initiative, intervention is going to look different campus by campus to serve this subgroup of students, and then think about how to serve other subgroups of students who may benefit from this work as well. I don't feel like we've talked about Tennessee Promise recently, and anybody who's been on the board for a long time knows that this is all I used to talk about, so this is a nice reminder of days past. But our very own Dr. Stephen Gentile and former THEC employees Jason Lee and Taylor Odell actually had a paper published, for those of you with time on your hands to read academic journals, which is probably not many of us, recently, about student debt since Tennessee Promise was implemented. So if you see the red box around the last 2 years on that table, you can see what that says, that student debt the amount of debt has gone down, not total debt. The average loan taken out by students has gone down. The proportion of students taking on debt has gone down as well. So I will let Dr. Gentile speak to the causality of any of this, because you all know that's a caveat I always have to make. But since the implementation of Tennessee Promise, there really has been a reduction in the proportion of students who borrow, as well as the average amount that they are borrowing. So as we think about affordability, and we think about being the most affordable state in the nation, innovative financial aid programs, Tennessee Promise is really serving our state and our students very well in this regard. And kudos to Stephen for getting this paper out. That's always an arduous process, as everybody behind me knows, and some of you in front of me know. Briefly again about Tennessee Promise, this has been a weird year. It's been a weird year for Tennessee Promise, for financial aid across the board. But the percentages and the numbers that are highlighted in red really are a testament to the work of our college access team and our outreach team. So even though things have been a little bit crazy, high schoolers are, for the most part, have spent at least some of their senior years doing their work from home. Our outreach team and our access team has still succeeded in getting students to take up Tennessee Promise, file their FAFSA, and the cohort enrolling this past fall actually enrolled at a slightly higher percentage comparable to prior years. Tennessee remains the #1 state in the nation for FAFSA filing. I feel like that's something we don't talk about quite as much anymore, and something about which we should be so proud. So thanks to Jason C. and Troy Grant. I know Jason's upstairs running the social media. Thank you to Jason. Thank you to Troy and their teams for doing what they do to keep these numbers where they are. And for students as individuals, of course. Finally, I want to mention just a very, very exciting investment that came out of the budget. Lou, at the end of the agenda, will do much more of a deep dive into what happened this legislative session and touch on the budget. But one of the big, exciting higher ed initiatives that will come soon, that came out of the budget, is a dramatic investment, and I say dramatic in the best possible way, in TCAT infrastructure and capacity, with the goal being we can clear the TCAT waitlist in the next few years. So currently, there are about 12,000 students, 11,400 students on the waitlist for a TCAT program. With an infusion of funds to maintain current capital, think about equipment, think about faculty salary, how to make comparable someone who works in a trade in the field, making them want to come teach, making it palatable for them to come teach financially. Really significant investments in all three of those buckets. From the THEC perspective, there is also a $25 million investment in the Give and Spark work. So I'm going to call out Mitch again, as well as Brandon Hudson, who are behind me. The work that they do to serve our rural communities in this space has just been transformative. And the fact that there's another infusion of funds in the spirit of this TCAT investment for them to continue that great work is both overwhelming and exciting. And I imagine they are nodding behind me. So very grateful to the General Assembly, to the administration for this investment. Lou will speak much more about all of this at the heel of the calendar. And with that, I know that was a lot, but there's a lot going on as always here at THEC. I'm happy to share all that with you, and as always, happy to take any questions before we move on.
Mr. Coben.
Emily, could you tell us the name of the periodical that Stephen Gentile's article appeared in?
The Journal of Higher Ed. I didn't know if it was financial aid or what. The Journal of Higher Ed. And we can send that around to everybody for the ride home.
That would be great. Yeah. Commissioner Watson, did you?
You just want to read the article? Is that?
Secretary Hargett.
Go back to our slide about Black Bell's success. Thank you. I see our friend Daryl Freeman over there. I know it's been a real passion of his and something he's been working on at MTSU. Who's on that committee, task force?
So I will ask Julie or Jeffrey to actually speak to the composition of the committee if one of you are willing to do so.
Thank you and good morning to everyone. We composed the committee, excuse me, with several individuals from institutions across the state. We have representatives from the institutions as well as the community level as well. And there is a list of them on our website. I can send that to you if you would like.
I'll look it up by the time you sit down.
Yes, sir. So we have individuals from TBR as well as the UT system and the UT institutions, and then the community colleges and all the LGIs too as well.
On that, Daryl?
Yes, sir, he is.
Of course.
Yes, he is.
All right. Well, I just think Daryl has I had Daryl speak to my employees recently, and that was one of the things we spent some time on. And I know it's a real passion of his, should be a passion of all of ours, is there's some things that we know that work, but for whatever reason, you know, we have been very slow and reluctant to apply those throughout the entire population. And so I hope that we will really be taking a strong look, and y'all will come back with some recommendations to us as well as the administration and legislature about what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And thank you, Jeffrey, for that comment.
Other questions? Dr. House, if we could, I'd like to go back on the corrections slide that you had there. Do we know or have data to know what percentage of those 700 students that are incarcerated, what percentage of the imprisoned population that is?
I can get the actual proportion. It's not a huge proportion. COVID definitely threw a wrench in some of the intervention just because of the physical ability to physically get into the facilities, and the expansion into more than 3, the latest 5 has been pretty recent as well. So it's not a huge proportion by any means, but I think what's exciting about this is the way in which it's growing and the support that will be offered following release as well.
That was kind of going to be my next question, and just thinking out loud about ways to incentivize more people who are in prison to participate in the programs that we have. You know, it seems like to me, and again, I'm thinking out loud, that if there were a way to maybe tie, I mean, expungement may not be the right word, but if you're trying to encourage people who are in prison to achieve a higher education credential or degree and pursue that while they're in prison with the prospect of being employed after they are released, it seems like that we should at least think about ways, and obviously this would require law,
right.
But that we should think about ways where somehow there's an incentive about either expungement or some way to say that your conviction, if you complete a program successfully, and assuming there's no risk to the public, that whatever your conviction is would not be a barrier to you being employed once you're released.
Yeah, that's a great point. We can absolutely have that conversation. A challenge we have faced with this as well, COVID notwithstanding, is just the timing. When someone is a certain period of time from release, this might not be what they're thinking about. But for someone who is closer to release, it may be top of mind. So really making sure whatever counseling navigation services are available to this population. We have 3 Reconnect navigators on the THEC team whose job it is to do this corrections work. So we have folks on Jessica Gibson's team and Mary Lappin's team for whom this is what they do. So I think what you just suggested is a huge conversation to engage those folks in, as well as many other parties.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Dr. House, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar, and the consent calendar addresses the post-secondary education authorization items. And as we do by convention, We typically consider the consent calendar as a whole without discussion, and so unless there is any objection, the floor is open with respect to entertaining a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Secretary Hargett. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Stafford. Any discussion on these items? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner. Aye. Commissioner Hassler. Commissioner Coben.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser.
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Watson. Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 12 ayes.
Very good. The consent calendar is adopted. We now move on to our regular calendar with item number 1 being financial and statistical reporting policy amendment. And I'll call on Amanda Claflin, please. Oh, there you are. Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Executive Director House and members of the Commission. I'd like to provide a brief overview of Agenda Item 1, which amends our financial and statistical reporting policy amendment. The reasons for this amendment are twofold. First, to memorialize existing practice, and second, to prepare and set the stage as our locally governed institutions prepare for data severance. What I'd like to highlight for you are 3 of the predominant changes in this policy amendment. The first of which is the inclusion or addition of our data dictionary, which is a long-standing document used by our data services team to communicate each of the elements in detail to those of our system offices who are reporting this information. So memorializing this document in this policy for future reference. The second is a direction to THEC staff to regularly assess the data collection, ensuring that it meets our reporting and policy needs. And then the third is a direction to our institutions to work with THEC staff to make sure that the data that they submit to us are accurate and reliable. In sum, this policy is helping to clarify existing practice as we prepare for data severance, which will increase the number of institutions submitting data to our student information system from 2 system offices to 8 entities. And so we want to just make sure that all these practices and policies become very clear. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and would recommend this policy for approval.
Thanks, Amanda. Questions? Okay, thanks very much. The floor is open for a motion.
So moved.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Scarlett to approve the policy amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mayor Wharton. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner. Aye. Commissioner Hassler. Commissioner Coben.
Aye.
Commissioner Moser.
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Watson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 12 ayes.
Very good. The motion's carried. Next item of the regular calendar, item number 2, off-campus location, East Tennessee State University, Blue Sky Chattanooga Center. Dr. Norfleet.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, and good morning, everyone. I'm excited for this proposed off-campus center request for East Tennessee State University. This proposed request will be known as the Blue Sky Chattanooga Center and is a collaboration between ETSU and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. This will address the ongoing need for skilled information technology professionals across the state, and the effort is to provide graduates across the states to help with the Drive to 55 attainment goal and economic development needs. The Blue Sky Chattanooga Center will be providing an opportunity for underserved students in the Hamilton County School District, and they will earn a BS in computing in 2.5 years. Students will begin in the summer, in which they will complete a mid-summer bridge program, and then they'll complete 2 full academic years and 1 fall semester. The first cohort is to begin July 2022, and students will satisfy competencies in cybersecurity, healthcare information systems, and data analytics. The Blue Sky Chattanooga Center will be provided at no cost to ETSU. The Blue Cross Blue Shield headquarters will provide adequate and necessary learning environment for students and faculty. Additional accommodations will be provided for programs related to the activities that will be held within the program. Please let me know if you have any additional questions.
Questions for Dr. Norfleet? Commissioner Stafford?
Dr. Norfleet, it sounds like a great program. I did notice that there is a guarantee from Blue Cross Blue Shield to employ all graduates, and I see the number is 50, sort of average expected over the years. Two questions. One, is there any sort of a cap on the number of students to be run through the program on a regular basis? And then two, any idea of how Blue Cross Blue Shield will be able to maintain that commitment throughout the program?
So I do have ETSU is here as well. President Noland and Dr. Pederisi are here to answer any questions, but there is a running an enrollment for this program, and I would ask that they could come and speak to that if you would like for them.
Dr. Nolan.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. It's a pleasure to be before you today to speak to a program that I feel has the opportunity to open doors of access for individuals in Hamilton County and individuals across the state. With respect to the direct question from Commissioner Stafford, in terms of the structure of the program, 50 would be the soft cap. From accreditation purposes and staffing purposes, I do not anticipate that we would move beyond that number. For any of the graduates of the program who would seek full-time employment at Blue Cross Blue Shield, that employment has been secured, and it is one of the expectations from a recruiting perspective. So as we move through what will be a rigorous recruiting process for students to enter the program, one of the guarantees would be upon completion of that 27-month process that they would have the opportunity to go to work at Blue Cross. The classrooms will be on-site, on-ground at their corporate headquarters. Former Regent Freeman, who's on their board, was here earlier, and I know that their CEO, J.D. Hickey, and their board are excited about this opportunity to not only grow their workforce, but to diversify their workforce.
Commissioner Coben.
And students from around the state, but is it not just Hamilton County students?
That's the primary focus. That is where students will be recruited from. But if there was a student from Northeast Tennessee who wanted to have the opportunity, I do not think we would deny that student the opportunity, but the focus is on first-generation, low-income students of color from Hamilton County. That is at the direction of Blue Cross.
I applaud the work that Blue Cross is leaning in from a business standpoint, and I really hope to see a lot more businesses like Blue Cross Blue Shield lean in and support post-secondary work like this. And I also am a big fan of ETSU, so don't take this with any critical. I am curious to know why UTC didn't step up. I know some of that information was in the documentation that we received, but I'd love to hear more of a perspective of why UTC was not able to step up given their location. And so,
Mr. Scarlett, I cannot speak to the actions of University of Tennessee Chattanooga. I don't know the expression of interest that was conveyed to them. I do know that there was an initial RFP that all institutions had the opportunity to consider. That was several years ago. ETSU considered applying at that point, but we were moving through some transitions, both curricularly and physically at the institution, so we did not respond. For the second call of interest, we did respond in that second call. Anything that happened between point A and point B, I cannot speak to the particulars. Staff might be able to.
Congratulations on the relationship.
So can I tack on to that, maybe looking at it from the other side? What did you all see in the program that made it attractive to you, and why did you have such an interest in it?
But first, it's consistent with our mission. We're an access institution. Our goal is to ensure that first-generation low-income students have the chance to realize their dreams. So the opportunity to work with first-generation students, with students of color, to partner with business and industry, and to partner with business and industry in East Tennessee. We are a university with a diverse portfolio of programs, a mission accent in the health sciences, and as we were building out elements of our computer science program, it was a natural alignment. So healthcare, IT, cyber, it was a natural alignment with our university and one of the largest players in the state from a healthcare perspective.
The questions for Dr. Nolan or Dr. Norfleet. Commissioner Coben.
Actually, this is not for President Nolan, but I wondered if we had anybody here from UT who could speak to University of
Thank you, Randy Boyd, President of the University of Tennessee. So UTC and I myself personally did talk with Blue Cross Blue Shield for a number of years about the program, but I think in the end there were some details that weren't economic or that felt like didn't work for UTC. We're very excited about ETSU doing this, so I want to make sure that I say that I think it's a really great initiative. It's very innovative. Disappointed that UT wasn't able to make it work, but we're excited that ETSU was. There were some difficulties around ownership of the curriculum, like some gen ed classes that we were producing. Blue Cross Blue Shield wanted to own the curriculum that we had developed, and there was some intellectual property issues around that. Then there were some economic issues. We have a campus, 5 miles away, and yet all gen ed classes and all classes needed to be taught on their campus. And so, we'd have a faculty member that's teaching 50 people in biology would have to go and teach the same class to 2 people potentially 5 miles away. So that didn't make a lot of economic sense. And there were a few other issues as well. But in the end, the details we got bogged down in the details, and it didn't make sense for us. But we're excited that ETSU's figured out a way to make it work, because I think it's an incredibly innovative idea to have industry sponsor programs that have a pathway directly to a job. So I applaud Brian Nolan and ETSU for this.
Thank you.
Bet.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Norfleet? Okay, thank you very much. All right, we need to take some action on this agenda item, so the floor is open. Okay, Commissioner Dishner, motion to approve. Commissioner Stafford with a second. Any discussion about this? I do want to ask, I guess, maybe from a staff perspective, this is the first sort of example of this at a 4-year institution that we have, correct? I think that's right. Yeah, and I think so with the TCAS, we know we have partnerships with like Nissan North America and those sorts of things. Do we feel like we have the appropriate regulations in place to address this model as it comes forward, or is that something we need to think about going forward? Or?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. I think the ways in which we facilitate the off-campus location process are a fundamental place to start here. I think the THEC staff, if we felt there was some kind of geographic issue or some kind of other issue with, I don't want to say territory, but for lack of a better word, we would address that on the front end. What I do commend ETSU and UTC for is direct lines of communication. No one is surprised by where the partnership landed because the communication has been very direct and very deliberate. If the THEC staff did not perceive that to be the case, or if there were other questions related to the off-campus process, there would need to be bigger and different conversations. So I would say fundamentally we're in a place to facilitate this, but we can always have more conversations about process. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dr. House. Any other comments before we call the roll? Okay, Madam Secretary.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner, Commissioner Hassler,
Aye.
Commissioner Coben, Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Watson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 12 ayes.
Very good. The program is approved. Congratulations. Okay, the next item is regular calendar item number 3, 2021-2022, binding tuition and fee ranges. Dr. Stephen Gentile.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission, Dr. Emily House. I'm Stephen Gentile, Chief Policy Officer, talking today about the 21-22 binding tuition and fee ranges. As you'll recall, back in November, and every November when we come forward with our appropriation request, we make a guiding range recommendation, and I will discuss in a few slides where we landed. The purpose of that guiding range is to give institutions an idea, the direction-setting guidance where we anticipate going should that budget be met. What happens in the intervening time, actually starting right before our commission meeting in November, in October, our institutions are gathering with faculty and staff and personnel and understanding the needs that they foresee for their institution a good 8 months in advance. We make our guiding range. Between then and now, they spend time really looking through their priorities, their affordability concerns, their scholarship needs, and what has happened with their finances up to that point. We then wait and see what happens with the administration, the General Assembly, and where we land with our budget, and we come forward to you with a binding range for tuition and a binding range for tuition and fees, by which the institutions must fall in or below. And by July 1 is when our institutions will set their tuition and fees. So a brief history: over the last 6 years, we've had continued lowest growth and fees, going back to just slightly before our binding authorities when tuition started to come down. But this is the lowest we've seen in over 4 decades, and the story continues to be a strong one. A reminder of what happened in 2021: we had a range of 0 to 2% in our guiding range, and unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the appropriation request did not come through, as we remember, as we were all going through some trying times. But we held still and steady to that 0 to 2% range, even though we did not have that appropriation increase. Further, though, all of our institutions went at the bottom of that range, and none of them increased their tuition during what has had to have been the most uncertain time in higher education that they've been through in a very long time. So then in November 2020, we came forward with our guiding range that accompanied our $36 million increase to fund the improvement outcomes in the formula. And we also had an assumption there of a 1.4% CPI, Consumer Price Index inflation rate, and a 2% salary increase, foreseeing what potentially the administration might do. We came forward with a 0 to 3% range. And after good discussion, the commission ultimately approved a 0 to 2% range on tuition and a 0 to 2% range on the combined maintenance and mandatory fees. Today we come forward with our binding ranges, looking at what happened during the legislative session. The legislative session was a very good one for higher education. Our $36 million was met, and we thank the administration and the General Assembly for giving us that. We also included a 4% partially funded salary increase. I'll talk more about that in a second. But instead of a 2% salary increase, we received a 4% salary increase for all of higher education. All that taken in consideration, and recognizing that salary increase and that it is partially funded, not fully funded, our recommendation today is a 0 to 2% increase for tuition and a 0 to 2% increase for the total combined maintenance and mandatory fees. I should always say, because I was speaking to someone who's new to higher ed in Tennessee, maintenance fees is tuition in Tennessee. So when I say maintenance fees, that is interchangeable with tuition. Some considerations here, and I know we've talked about this in our commission materials. When the state receives a salary increase, the agencies like THEC, Department of Ed, Transportation, we receive that full increase as a body. When the institutions receive a 4% salary increase, they receive partial funding for it with the anticipation that they will subsidize the remaining 4% using either tuition revenue or other methods. Tuition revenue being the major assumption there. That partial funding is for the universities, 55% from the state, 45% from the institutions. For community colleges, it's 2/3 from the state, 1/3 from the institutions. And for the TCATs, it's 80% from the state, 20% from the institutions. What I did not have in the materials in front of you here, because this is news as of last week, is that, yes, we're getting the 4% salary increase, again, which institutions are expecting to subsidize. And also the CPI that has been out as of most recently from the April is at 4.2% right now, which is up from what we assumed was 1.4% back in November. I know that inflation has been the topic of conversation in all of the financial news going on right now. And the first glimpse we got of it last week pointed towards higher costs to come. Right now, from a supply side constraint that we're seeing in capital costs as well. So some of our institutions will look to rely on tuition increases to be able to meet that salary increase and perhaps other inflationary costs. Other institutions are going to use that tuition range to perhaps streamline some costs on campus. A report came out this morning from the CUBO, the National Association of College and University Business Officers. And in that report, it said about 3/4 of all institutions have differential fees for online courses versus in-person. Only 14% of those institutions have lower online fees than in-person. And that was looking at this past year. Tennessee State University did that. They offered a discount for students who did not come to campus. 20% discount, I believe. University of Memphis, in that 0 to 2% range, is doing something that I think is very innovative. And it's actually going to be at a cost for them of about $700,000, $800,000 in tuition revenue, where they're going to get rid of that extra online fee and instead increase tuition slightly, about 1.5%, 1.6%, to be able to accompany that tuition revenue loss, so that they can then expand online offerings at the same cost of the in-person. We heard from some institutions in the last week that they're feeling some scholarship need, be able to discount tuition more so to be able to compete with other institutions either outside of the state or inside of Tennessee. The discount rate is what we refer to as when institutions are discounting tuition, that price level that you see in those materials, they don't charge that to everyone. In fact, the discount rate at many of our institutions or universities is between 20 and 25%, some as high as over 30%, where they feel a need to give out scholarships to lower that tuition. Some institutions plan to use a tuition increase to increase their scholarship amount, to lower that net price further. Conversations with commissioners before this meeting, I was asked what's happening with our regional peers. We did look into it, and some of our regional peers have not yet announced what they're doing from a state level. But what we do know is that a lot of the flagship universities in our neighboring states are going to hold tuition flat. And that is true with our own flagship university here in Tennessee. UT Knoxville has planned to hold their tuition flat. Mississippi has a statewide increase of about 4%. Missouri, their Senate voted to get rid of the cap they had on tuition growth so that institutions can grow tuition more than they have in the past. Kentucky is going to have an increase of 2% overall. There is one state, Georgia, that is holding tuition flat across all institutions. North Carolina is holding tuition flat, but increasing fees over 2%. So our 0 to 2% range, looking at the institutions that we were able to track so far, is right there in the middle, lower than a couple states and right about where other states are too. I was also asked about the cost savings that are happening on campus across the state. This has been a very trying year, as you can imagine. TBR has had substantial enrollment declines. A couple of our universities have as well. What that has brought is forced cost savings in this past year. We've heard from institutions that they are still in hiring freezes, staff and faculty hiring freezes. There's been freezing on travel. There have been lots of conversation about that drop in subsequent tuition revenue. One of our institutions mentioned that their substantial decline in international students offset any tuition increases they received from enrollment of other students. So they're all working through this right now, and they do have help from the federal funds that have come in over the last year, but it's not meeting all that need. Those are the big considerations we have in front of us today. Over the last 13, 14 years, you see what our ranges have fallen. There was a time when we did not have binding range authority. That is pre-focus, and I've shown you this slide in the past. And some uncertain times, like 2011, 12, we set a floor and not a ceiling on our range, allowing institutions to really field out what they needed to do. Since that time, we have moved forward with lower and lower ranges, and since our binding authority has been in place, going from above 3% before binding down to 2% today. When thinking about the actual cost that students would receive if they don't have increased discount rates, scholarships, at the university average, a 2% increase for the year is just under $200. For community colleges, it's $91, and for TCATs, it's just about $80. With that, members of the commission, our staff recommendation is to maintain that 0 to 2% range for tuition, maintenance fees, 0 to 2% range for the combined maintenance and mandatory.
Thanks, Dr. Gentile. Questions, comments? Commissioner Coben.
Gentile, could you explain to me for like the third time, and I'm so sorry, I never can quite grasp this, but why does it cost more to take a class online than in person?
Yes, well, there are substantial fixed costs that go into teaching a class online and the software upgrades that are associated with it. The question that I toss around a lot is, how do you offset that with revenue increases? Because the assumption would be, so they are upfront costs for institutions to overcome.
And I would think upfront and one-time costs for the most part.
And they need to maintain that technology as well over time, and then upgrading the services as they come along. And that is the argument for why the costs are higher. Now, how to offset those costs, and we've seen this happen at Georgia Tech with their Masters of Computer Science. The idea there is you've got those upfront costs, and you offset them by having higher enrollment and meeting that one professor is able to teach hundreds and more so of students. I think the best way forward for our institutions, and I don't want to come across as speaking on behalf of them for this, but I guess I will right now, is that the best way to overcome that cost is to find the niche programs where you can increase enrollment. I just started teaching an online course at Vanderbilt, and my class size is 15 students. It's online. It's completely online. That is not how you make it a revenue winner. Instead, it would be me teaching 100 students, 150 students, and trying to navigate that. So the best way, and this is what Memphis is trying to do. They want to increase their University of Memphis Global campus to be able to have more students engaging with the institution. But it does take upfront costs. Like I said, Memphis is going to have a tuition revenue hit and investment on the front end.
Other questions?
So apart from the conundrum of the higher cost of online service delivery, are we satisfied that the colleges and universities are doing as much as they can to lower their costs overall, to try to overcome some of the restrictions from the limitations that are set?
Yes, they have every week. Crystal Collins and Russell Van Zomeren, who's our new director of fiscal policy, are on a CFO call with all the universities, and this is a constant conversation. Is how to maintain the rising costs and get them lower as they face the pandemic and other factors. They are constantly trying to find new ways to do this. Austin Peay actually implemented this year the financial planning task force on their campus to be able to address concerns about rising costs elsewhere. And they've convened from across the university key stakeholders to find ways to lower this cost. But I've got to say, honestly, apart from the need that they see to attract more students with lower tuition, this commission here, with this binding range authority and narrowing the range, has also put it out there that we need to be more efficient with our students, with our costs here, and lowering those costs. And I do believe that our institutions are doing what they can to meet that need.
Watson.
Steve, I think we talked about this at other meetings, but how much money does this generate for higher education?
Typically about 1% increase in tuition will yield about $15 million.
So
2% would be $20 million.
$30 million across the entire higher education system. $30 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what percent of total revenue does that represent?
Percent of total revenue overall, you receive about $1.5 billion in tuition revenue, and state appropriations it adds on about $1 billion on top of that.
So we're talking about 0.002 thousandths of 1%. So recommendation, did you determine that tuition increases do not have an adverse impact on enrollment?
Interesting. Research came out a few weeks ago, actually, that looked at states that implement flat tuition growth on all their institutions. And I can't, unfortunately, cite the name of the researchers who were involved with that, but it was published in a higher education journal. And they did find that with tuition held flat, one of the release valves that institutions use is to lower scholarship levels. And so going back to the discounting tuition conversation we just had, on the face of it, lower tuition, you would think, would bring more demand. You meet more demand, supply and demand. However, the release valve that some institutions have used in the study, that they were able to find causality with it, the institutions ultimately led to lowering scholarship levels, which prevented being able to reach more students who could not pay that list price. So that's recent research on it. Although I do recognize that, yes, conceivably lower tuition would showed.
The study you just talked about, you would agree is inconsistent with diversity and the ability of the poor parts to pay tuition. That accurate?
All I can
that is,
say there.
The tuition increases have an adverse impact on diversity at universities.
Right. I've not. This study I referenced did not go into that element of it. No, sir.
What about on the level of student debt? Does this have tuition increases have an adverse impact on the level of student debt?
Depends what's happening with financial aid in the state. Another study came out yesterday from SHIO, our professional organization, that looked at what states are doing with financial aid versus appropriations to institutions directly. Tennessee had the highest growth in financial aid grant-wise out of all states in the union. And so that, and with Tennessee, what we've seen has been a lowering of debt over time. Tennessee Promise, that study shows part of it as well. So it depends. It depends on what's happening with financial aid as tuition grows. Are they able to discount tuition in a way that is strategic to allow those who are lower income students to be able to access that college at a lower cost so they don't have to take out tuition? I mean, that lands on institutional behavior and what their strategy is for enrollment management.
So, if I may. Everyone has laughed at me for 8 years when I've talked about causality.
I laughed at you. Nobody ever laughed at you about that.
for 8 years talking about causality, but I think your questions are the right ones, sir, and I think it's not just a direct causal relationship between one thing and the other, right? Tuition goes up, therefore fewer students of color enroll. Tuition goes up, therefore lower income students are not able to enroll. And that's logical. But I think to Stephen's point, to Dr. Gentile's point, there's so much more in that mix. What does financial aid look like? What does debt load look like? What does cost of attendance look like beyond tuition? So your questions are the right ones, but I just want to plug my caveats over the past 8 years about directionality and causality because there's so much to this discussion.
There's no question you can read almost any study on these subjects that you want one side or the other. Studies that I've read that go back to 10, 12, 13 are that tuition increases don't have an adverse impact on enrollment, and the more recent ones say they absolutely do and absolutely affect minority students adversely, which is, as I view these discussions, this is really a proxy. I mean, we're talking about a NIT, and we're talking about shifting $30 million worth of expenses from the universities to the students. Business standpoint, the university can do that in a heartbeat. I mean, there's not a university president here that can't cut 1% out of their budget and not miss a beat. We can just that's making a determination that it's better for the students to bear this than the universities. But we're really talking about a proxy. This is a proxy discussion for the value proposition that higher education faces. And you and I have talked about the recent public offering of Coursera, which is an online company, and I would encourage everybody to go draw up their S1 and read the first prospectus summary. It is absolutely stunning. And then you look at what edX is doing, what value proposition crisis, and we're $30 million is what we're talking about is a net. I think it's inappropriate for the institutions to shift that to the students personally. But the real discussion for a longer term, and maybe for another meeting, is for us to talk about the value proposition. It is really, in my judgment, it is the most serious issue that higher education faces. Thank you.
Secretary Hargett.
Thank you. I'll try and follow that. I always enjoy the conversations we have like this every year. And students, fee-paying students across the state have no greater advocate than my mentor over there, Frank Watson, who has really taken this on over the last several years. And I'd like to think we have followed along with him. And to his point, you know, we do talk about $30 million across the entire higher ed spectrum. To me, this body should also be advocating in front of the legislature. And I'd be curious, were there discussions with the chairman of the education committees or finance committees to say, look, if you ever want to make sure that we hold tuition flat this year, and this state is awash in cash this year. I mean, it's unbelievable how much money we have right now. $30 million in this budget would have been a drop in the bucket to have made sure that every institution in the state held tuition flat. Was that a discussion among any of the chairmen?
Sir,
or the governor's office?
based on the conversation we had in November of 2019 and the one that you led, you did push us and we're grateful for it, to show to the administration and General Assembly ultimately what that would look like to keep tuition flat. So we did include that in our analysis for them. The concern, though, and though the state was use the word flush with cash this go around, the concern with tuition and implementing costs to keep that tuition flat, it's reliant on recurring funding increases, not non-recurring funding increases. So that's the pool we're looking at, is the recurring funding. What can we get from that to be able to keep tuition flat? And I think that's the challenge there. But we have shared that information with them. Yes, sir.
Well, even then, even if during this time it forestalls a tuition and mandatory fee increase for just 1 year, even understanding that it's a non-recurring, it feels like to me if I'm a fee payer, even if you can't tell me that in my sophomore, junior, and senior year that I'm not going to have that increase, I'll gladly take it in my freshman year, however I can get it. I mean, that's real money in those students' pockets. You know, even if it's $200 a semester, you know, for some students, that's the difference in maybe not having to work, you know, an extra shift sometime and be able to focus on their studies or whatever else it is. So when you start looking at the broad spectrum, to Commissioner Watson's point, it just feels like a real drop in the bucket. And as I had a conversation with one university president a couple of years ago, as they were contemplating between 0 and 1, I said, ask yourself, is the juice really worth the squeeze? I said, and would you rather be able to go out to your words, value proposition? Don't you think it's valuable to be able to go out to your customers, the people you're trying to sell to, these incoming freshmen, or people who are, you know, after 2-year school trying to head over to their 4-year school? Don't you think there's some value in being able to tell people that we kept tuition flat? And so, you know, I'm always torn here because I want to give university leaders the opportunity to make the decision they need to make, and we need to trust them. We've got a lot of great ones around this state, and we've got a lot of great, you know, the TBR board is strong, the UT board is strong, and the LGIs are strong. We have never had a better group of higher ed leaders in our state during my 20-plus years in state government. But I just hope that we're really paying close attention sometimes to what Commissioner Watson talked about. It's a rounding error in a lot of cases. So if I can, I want to weave over to the online class discussion. And if I can follow on Commissioner Coben's comments, to me it's counterintuitive that an online course could cost more. And I get there's upfront costs, but it also seems like over a period of time, just like a building, you know, you're paying for that over a period of time. It feels like there ought to be some way we can amortize that and make that less expensive and be able to increase the student population, because it feels like to me it would be cheaper to offer it that way. But along those lines, you know, we've got tuition plus mandatory fees. Is there any conversation nationally about differential mandatory fees for online classes? Because if I am, and a silly example here, but if I am an online student in California who is enrolled in one of ours, I really am not interested in what type of recreational facilities you are building on campus. So, you know, I know there's one campus here in our state a few years ago that charged every student a parking fee to, even if they didn't have a car, to be able to pay for new facilities on that campus. And so we need to be having, if we're talking about the value proposition too, we need to really be digging down, in my opinion, to what is the appropriate level of cost for students. And students at some point are going to make a decision, and I shouldn't say going to, a lot of them are making it right now that, hey, I don't care about having this nice recreational facility on campus. I don't care about having a great basketball team or football team or baseball team, whatever. I don't care about those things. So I want to pay a reduced fee, even if it's 2% or 1%. I'll take my 1 or 2% if I'm a fee payer and I'm not interested in those things. Any conversation like that happening nationally in the public education sector?
Chairman Cope, do we have a couple hours to talk through this? Because this is.
I'm willing to go out and grab a cup of coffee or something later on. But
Yes, sir.
I do think there's also some value. And I know this last year has been a different kind of year. For the members of this body to really spend some time together and have some real visionary conversations about what we think higher education ought to look like. And with all due respect to Dr. House and to you and the great staff at THEC, we count on you for good data. We count on you to help us understand what you're seeing nationally. But there also ought to be some level of us, even a greater level of us, helping guide you about where we want to see higher education go in Tennessee.
Sir, and the joke about the 2 hours is because this is a topic that I love talking about. And the online fees, for instance, as an example, I know Comptroller Mumpower's on the phone. OREA, the Office for Research, Education, and Accountability, is coming out in about a month or so about online fees, in which in their office, that report, I believe, led by Lauren Spires, looking into online fees across our campuses, and we've had conversations with them, as have our business officers from the universities and community colleges. I'm looking forward to reading the first draft of that and to see the recommendations in there and how that relates to what we're doing here. In general, mandatory fees and also non-mandatory fees, I'll talk about that, the second one in a second, but mandatory fees has often been looked at as a release valve when it comes to tuition restriction, which is why it's in our range. Tuition and mandatory fees is in our range, so it is not a release valve. Sir, what concerns me often are non-mandatory fees. So, and I don't know if that's a new topic to go in here, but we don't control non-mandatory fees, and arguably we probably shouldn't, but the course fees that come with certain disciplines. If I'm a student and I want to go into engineering, or if I want to go into pre-law, what are the differential fees associated with that? The national conversation, and I want to applaud SHIO, again, our professional organization that we are part of, that create a survey on state finances every year, have charged us to now start collecting that information from our institutions so that we can see how we're pitted up against other states on those non-mandatory fees. I want to applaud Tennessee Tech right now. They are thinking of ways to use the tuition range that we have to reduce or get rid of those non-mandatory fees within that 0 to 2% range. They can't do it for all disciplines, but they're thinking outside the box on how to be able to do that. Because my concern, growing up in rural Appalachia, Western North Carolina, who had a strong focus on my budget, if I went to an institution and even though a discipline would pay off in the long run for me, if I couldn't meet at that time, those extra costs, I probably would not have enrolled in it. So again, I'm very passionate about this topic of area and look forward to seeing what Senior Director Crystal Collins collects from the institutions.
Mayor Wharton?
I think I've been on this commission, 30 years or so. I don't know how many times I've heard this discussion. I've been looking for that straight line link between tuition fees, and I always say that correlation does not mean causation. Mr. Secretary, I've looked at every college over the years, visited. We used to rotate our meetings. We would go to the college campuses, so I have a pretty good familiarity with the quality of folks who are leading our institutions of higher learning. We and I have been looking for those areas where we can find these places where we can cut budgets. I haven't found it yet. I will say in the state of Tennessee, the best value proposition we have is our system of higher education. We've led in so many ways. Fund the formula. I remember the late Governor Ned McWhorter got so angry with this commission because we kept using the word that the governor give full funding to the formula. He got so angry one day, literally, that he sent a couple of the state planes to Memphis to get me and all over the state. He and they called him Dr. No. David, what was his name?
Manning.
David Manning. And they took us to the Woodhouse. But in the end, they saw that these unnecessary, this myth of all these unnecessary costs, because we were examined inside and out, and it's not there. That does not say that we should escape careful scrutiny of every dollar that we're charging and every dollar that we're spending. I will close by saying this, Mr. Secretary. I would welcome that intense examination and value comparison, but if at the same time we did the same analysis of our corrections budget, what's the return on prisons? I've had some experience in this. I was a chief public defender for 22 years. How much of a value proposition are we getting out of our prisons and our juvenile detention? How much of a value proposition are we getting when the medically indigent use emergency rooms for their doctor? So if we're going to have this analysis, let's take where the state budget money is going and bring them into the room at the same time. You used to see the bumper sticker? If you think education costs, try ignorance. So all of this is good, but I don't think we're ever going to find that straight line link between the increased that we discover here. Why do I know that? Because I took part in a study where we actually went out and interviewed thousands of students who had some education but did not persist to completion. Not one said they increased the fees by 1.5%. There were so many other things in life that impacted that. Good conversation, good study, but out there on the streets, I don't think it's the real word. That's my editorial, and I'll stick with it.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Scarlett.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentile. Appreciate the information you provided. A couple questions for you. One, the federal government has provided $700 million to higher education. Curious to know, I don't know the regulations behind that, but I'm curious to know what that's going into versus what the tuition increase is going into. My second question is, we're talking only about enrollment versus outcomes. And I'm curious to know if there's any sort of research that's been done in regards to the outcomes out of any of the different types of universities and community colleges and TCATs in regards to workforce development pre-Tennessee Promise and since Tennessee Promise.
So to the first question about the federal funds that have come in, you're right, it's about $700 million. There's actually a balance of that that's to $1 billion, but a good number, 350 million of it, had to go directly to students as aid. So the funding that went to institutional portion is about 700 million. The cost that we are tracking up to about mid-year last year of how much it was costing institutions, COVID in general, from lost revenue to expenses, it was about on par with that, if not more at some institutions and less at others. Some of that $650 million is increased substantially at our HBCU, Tennessee State University, who received a good amount of money outside of that. The first two rounds of the funding with regards to the federal funds was very narrow on where that funding can go. It could not go, for instance, to lost revenue. A lot of our institutions, especially TBR, with losing about $35, $40 million in tuition revenue because of a lowered enrollment that could only be explained by COVID, they could not subsidize it with the CARES Act funding that came in. Subsequent funding has allowed for that to happen. A lot of that federal funding also went directly to making online learning in a split second viable for institutions. That's not a long-term solution. Good online learning takes more than just flipping on Zoom, but to be able to get laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots to institutions, that's where a lot of that funding also went to in making that work. Second question, I believe, is about Tennessee Promise and its impact on workforce development. Is that correct?
Because we're only talking about enrollment in this conversation today, and I'm curious to know what the outcomes are. Are we developing workforce? Are we developing people to go into careers with a living wage?
House, were you?
So short answer, we are beginning both at THEC through the P20 system, but also with some of our university partners to really explore that much more deeply. Bill Fox, Celeste Carruthers, and the team at the Boyd Center at UT Knoxville have been doing a lot of work and a lot of writing about the long-term impacts of Tennessee Promise, including workforce impacts. So a lot of that is still in progress, and I would not speak for Bill or Celeste in that regard, but that work is definitely happening both here on a more descriptive level through the state's longitudinal data system, and then much more rigorously with our university partners.
Questions? Or comments? Thank you, Dr. Gentile. Okay, the floor is open.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the 0 to 2% binding tuition range for Mayor Wharton. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Stafford. Floor is open for discussion. Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassler,
Aye.
Commissioner Coben,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Watson, Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 11 ayes and 1 nay.
Okay, the binding tuition range is adopted. The next item on the agenda of the regular calendar is item number 4, new academic programs. The very first one being the East Tennessee State University Digital Media Master of Fine Arts. And let's see who has that. I think it's Dr. Petteries or Dr. Nolan. Dr. Nolan. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you're right.
Morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be able to present to you a proposal from East Tennessee State University for the creation of an MA. Yeah.
Sorry, we're not
so
sure
sorry.
that mic's working. Can you say something? Oh,
Test, test. Okay.
I just want to pull it closer. But yeah.
I'll do that. I'm a little height impaired, so.
That's okay.
East Tennessee State University has an existing undergraduate digital media program. Has a long history of great success. We enroll every year about 300 undergraduate students, graduate about 50 students, and those students to this point have not had a pathway for graduate study. Not only not at ETSU, but not anywhere in the state of Tennessee. And so this proposal to create an MFA program in digital media creates an opportunity for students not only at ETSU, but across the state of Tennessee. This is a 60 credit hour graduate program. It's defined as 60 to 66 credit hours to allow students additional time to work on their culminating project should that be necessary. And the coursework involves about 12 credit hours on individual skills, about 12 credit hours of coursework on team-related projects, and then students will also gain experience working in emerging technologies. As you can imagine, this is a field that is extremely dynamic, and so students on a regular basis will get the opportunity to work with cutting-edge technology. ETSU is able to bring this proposal forward without there being a lot of additional incremental costs to the institution because of the existing infrastructure with our undergraduate program. The undergraduate program already possesses resources such as a large-scale computing render farm, virtual reality equipment, photogrammetry rigs, a film production studio, and so all of those resources will be able to be leveraged in this program. NASAD is the relevant discipline-specific accreditor for this, and they are in the process of doing our institutional review, and so they have looked at this program as a part of that. One of the things that's exciting to our students is this is a terminal degree program, and so does comply with the NASAD requirements for a terminal degree. So graduates of this program would be able to teach at other institutions. We see this as being an opportunity to bring professionals back to campus as well as undergraduate students who want to progress to graduate work. And one of the things that will be true of the faculty is it will have industry professionals who will come back to campus to teach as well. There'll be one new faculty member added to the department to support this program, and this will be a professor of practice who has extensive experience in this field. We're really excited about the fact that this addresses workforce and economic development needs by growing the professional creative class. Undergraduates get good jobs coming out of this program, and so this creates an opportunity for really moving into new and different kinds of jobs. As I mentioned before, this is the only graduate program in the state of Tennessee that would offer a master's level degree. There are other regional universities, but you'll find them largely at private institutions or much larger institutions. And when you look at the cost of attendance, they're 2 to 3 times more expensive than what this degree would cost. So we think this is an excellent value for students. Although this is designed to be a program that students will matriculate through in 2 to 3 years, it is not structured as a cohort program. So for professionals who would like to pursue this degree along with working and take an extended time to complete the program, that is something that is available to them. We are projecting a steady state of 16 to 17 students enrolled in this program. Those are very conservative estimates. We'll build up to that number by about year 3. The program will break even in year 2. A lot of the marginal expenses here are related to what I mentioned a moment ago with the addition of new faculty, the addition of a program director for this program, and then support for things like graduate assistantships for the students. As I mentioned, there are no other universities in the state that offer this kind of program, and there are only 12 universities in the country. Now, that's not to say that there's not demand for this. The programs that are out there are well enrolled and are graduating large numbers of students, but we have an opportunity to create something new for the state. That's a great cost and value opportunity for our students. We have surveyed our undergraduate students and some of our alumni. There's great excitement. I think there's a lot of people that are eagerly anticipating the outcome of the meeting today and hoping that perhaps in the next few days they'll be able to make application to enter this program in the fall at ETSU. The state is making investment in this space. The Tennessee Visual Content Modernization Act of 2018 and other recent legislation has put money into this field, so we see this as being very consistent with the state efforts to grow this field as well. Growing field, and I think there's a great opportunity here for our students. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Petteris. Any questions Commissioner Coben.
As usual, first of all, I want to applaud you all for putting this in the College of Business. I like where it's located. I think that's a terrific idea. The 60 to 66 credit hours surprised me. Is that because it is a terminal degree? Okay, and as such, as a terminal degree, is there a time limit on the non-co?
It is defined as 60 hours to your first part because of NASAD requirements. I would have to check to see whether NASAD sets any time horizon associated with that. We don't foresee students taking an extremely long period of time through the program, but I don't know that I could give you a time limit on how that would play out.
Not have a time limit for a student to start and finish this program?
Not one that should limit students in this situation, no.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I'm so sorry, Dawson. Yep.
I was just wondering, so it says that 70% of the program is going to be studio-based credit, right? Will you kind of define what based is and where maybe the other 30% of the coursework is going to be?
Sure. So this is a very hands-on degree. You know, one of the reasons why this is housed in the College of Business and Technology is because students will not be working with paintbrushes or clay. They'll be sitting in front of computers and using very advanced technology to create their artwork. And so that's why 70% of this work will feature students. There are things beyond that, though, that students need to develop their skill. One of the aspects of this program is learning to work with clients who have requirements and specifications for work. We'll have project-based classes where they'll be engaging with clients and then creating.
Other questions? Treasurer Lillard. Yes, sir.
Chairman, I move approval of the item.
Yes, sir. Thanks very much. I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right. From Commissioner Scarlett, any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassler, Commissioner Coben,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Watson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 12 ayes.
Very good. The motion is carried and the program is adopted and approved. Next item, 4B, East Tennessee State University, Orthotics and Prosthetics, Master of Science, Dr. Nolan, or Dr. Samples.
Good morning. I'm Don Samples, Dean of the College of Clinical and Rehabilitative Health Sciences at East Tennessee State University. First of all, I want to thank you, the Commission, for allowing us, the clicker, for allowing us to bring this presentation for a new academic proposal in front of you today. Also, thanks to Dr. Dandridge Johnson and Dr. Roberts for guiding us along the way on this proposal. Also, I'd like to thank East Tennessee State University's Board of Trustees, University Administration, and most importantly, the college faculty that drove this new course proposal forward. This academic program, the curriculum consists of 2 years of preparation with a clinical experience placed in between the first and second year. We did work with consultants in the field, and we actually hired an educational leader in the profession of orthotics and prosthetics to develop an innovative curriculum that expands the graduate's scope of practice. This profession is somewhat young, with currently only 13 programs in the country. However, new programs across the country are in the developmental stage as we speak. This would be the only prosthetics and orthotics program in the state of Tennessee and within the university service region. Closest program being about 300 miles away from our university. This program builds on the undergraduate program Rehab Science that was approved by this commission 3 years ago. The program provides an opportunity for citizens in our region to pursue a degree in an expanding health-related profession without having to leave our region. In addition, these new health providers will improve access to their services and improve patient outcomes. The curriculum is designed to train future healthcare providers along with other professions that we currently have, such as physical therapy, speech pathology, and audiology students. It allows the college to continue to develop and expand our emphasis on the rehab professions with our current other rehab programs that we offer. The demand for these programs are very high. In addition to this program, there's a significant impact on the healthcare of the region and state. There's about a 17% increase for these providers in the next 7 to 8 years across the country, and about a 22% increase for these providers in the state of Tennessee. With the increasing age of the population in our region, with the associated health problems such as diabetes and cardiovascular disease, the need for these professionals is growing. In addition, this program will collaborate with our local VA and its patients returning from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Again, I'd like to point out there is no accredited program in the state of Tennessee and our region. Access to their services is in very high demand. In terms of financials, all costs for faculty and equipment associated with the program startup will be covered by the college and the university. No additional requests for funds will be required. And in closing, this program anticipates enrolling a cohort annually of 15 students each academic year for a total of 29 enrollment at the end of the 2 years, with a factor of attrition of about a student or two every couple of years. See the image of the space that we hope to have started and finished by the time the program is up and running. That's a building on the VA campus that we have access to the first floor that we plan on going in and doing some renovation and offering these two programs. Speaking of that, this program will seek professional accreditation through NCOPE, which is the National Commission on Orthotics and Prosthetics Education. This program will develop a collaborative relationship with the VA in Johnson City. And it's important to note that in the early process of program development, we actually met with now retired Congressman Dr. Phil Rowe to discuss collaborative opportunities with the VA. We arranged for us to take a tour of Walter Reed's Orthotics and Prosthetics Department at Walter Reed in D.C. Likewise, we've done our due diligence by visiting Baylor University's O&P program and Alabama State's O&P program in Montgomery to tour their facilities and to observe best practices in O&P education. Questions?
Sir, Commissioner Stafford.
So a couple of questions. One, your revenue chart didn't show a break-even point. At what point do you anticipate breaking even, or does that happen?
We never break even per se. This program will also have a little more cost than it has revenue. So, but we're close, and we're comfortable with that amount of expense every year.
In addition to the VA, are there other potentially larger employers in the region or within the state?
There are a lot of healthcare facilities, a lot of rehab facilities will utilize these providers. These providers actually can go out and hang a shingle and have their own private practice if they choose to. They can work at any VA. That's one of the reasons why we met with Dr. Rowe. We were interested in collaborating and placing students at VAs across the country, and we're still pursuing that opportunity. So there are plenty of practice opportunities for these professionals across the country, in the state and across the country.
Other questions for Dr. Samples?
Chairman, I move approval of the
Yes.
item.
Yes, sir. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Secretary Hargett. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner, Commissioner Hassler, Commissioner Coben,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Watson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett,
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 12 ayes.
Great, the motion's carried. The program is approved. Next, item 4C, East Tennessee State University, Doctor of Occupational Therapy, Dr. Samples.
Well, thank you again for giving me this opportunity and the luxury of being able to bring this new academic program in front of the commission. Also, again, thanks to Dr. Dandridge Johnson and Dr. Roberts again. Thank you. We've kept them busy the last few years working with us on this and the other proposals that we've been shepherding through. Also, again, thank you to the ETSU Board of Trustees, University Administration, and most importantly, again, the college faculty as we shepherd this through. This is a very unique academic program that will have a heavy emphasis on interprofessional training with our current physical therapy program, and now, as of 5 minutes ago, our new orthotics and prosthetics program. Key courses in the curriculum will be designed to bring these students together in the classroom and in labs in an effort for students to better train and learn more about each profession and how to improve patient care and patient outcomes. The curriculum consists of 3 academic years, that's year-round, with the last year emphasis being placed on clinical internships and capstone experiences. The program will continue to build upon the university's Academic Health Science Center diverse portfolio in healthcare programs. These students will interact with other health science colleges through coursework such as the College of Medicine's Gross Anatomy Lab and clinical training at various sites. This program will also build on the undergraduate program Rehab Science that was approved by the Commission a few years ago. This program provides an opportunity for citizens in our region to pursue a degree in occupational therapy without having to leave our own region. The addition of these new healthcare providers in the region will improve access to their services and improve patient outcomes. This will allow the college again to continue to develop and expand an emphasis on rehab professions with our current physical therapy, speech-language pathology, audiology, and now O&P programs. The addition of this program will significantly increase the access to more rehab professionals in our region. The national projections for growth in occupational therapists over the next 7 to 8 years is about 16%, with a growth rate in Tennessee of about 18%. There's currently no public institutions in Northeast Tennessee that offer this degree. OT providers are actually less prevalent in our region compared to other rehab professions. Occupational therapists are needed in our region due to significant increase in the aging and associated healthcare needs of these individuals. Again, with the financial statements here, the overall cost for the faculty and equipment associated with this program startup will be covered by the university and the college. No additional requests for funds will be requested. The program is projected to enroll 24 students each academic year for a total of 68 students in a cohort at any given time after 3 years, with some attrition factored in. The program will seek accreditation through ACOTE, which is the Accreditation Council for Occupational Therapy Education. The program, as I mentioned earlier, will be located on the VA campus, along with the O&P program and the PT program. But it will help us continue our long history of collaboration with the VA in our region. Our partnership with the VA can be demonstrated through, we have duly appointed faculty, collaborative research opportunities for faculty and the VA, and student internships in most all of our programs. Questions?
Dr. Samples, questions?
I've got one I'm almost embarrassed to ask. How about going back to your second slide?
Okay. Sorry.
Whoa. Yeah, second slide.
I'm sorry.
I know that I'm probably about to be exposed for a really stupid question here. But help me understand what that picture's got to do with occupational therapy, because I'm looking at it and I just don't.
Well, I'll say something I'm not an OT, so I don't know. I did bring with me today the department chair for rehab sciences, which is an OT. If you want to ask him that, he might be able to answer it.
I'll get an answer afterwards. I just looked at that. I was trying to figure out what the heck to do with it. So,
Thanks, Secretary Hargett. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Thank you.
And as an alumni of ETSU, I would like to say congratulations on 4 outstanding programs they presented today.
Yes, I concur. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right, Commissioner Scarlett. Any further comments or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassler,
Aye.
Commissioner Coben,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Watson, Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett,
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 12 ayes.
Very good. The motion is carried. The program's approved. Thank you, Dr. Samples. Next item, 4D, University of Memphis Master of Nonprofit Management. Dr.
Good
Hindy?
morning. I'm accompanied today by the chair of our Department of Public and Nonprofit Administration, who can answer any questions that are too difficult for me. This is a proposal to take a program that we've offered as a certificate and as a concentration, and in order to better serve the students in this program, to make it an independent master's degree program that can specialize on their particular needs for nonprofit. It's a 39 credit hour program. It will be fully online, and I'd be happy to talk about why offering it online is every bit as expensive and labor intensive as it is in the on ground, unless you use adjuncts, less qualified faculty, and do not involve with them. So Professor Roble, who teaches online, would be happy to let you know that actually teaching the courses takes more time on the instructor. And if it's going to be a quality program, that we have PhDs teaching it and not someplace else. So it's very cheap if you give them an electronic textbook and have somebody else do the grading. But if you want success rates and if you want quality, a quality online program is going to cost us as much effort, even after it has been, it's become mature as our on-ground programs. And we've experienced that across the university. That's why we have a legitimate, legitimately earned reputation of having one of the highest quality online programs in the country, because we use regular faculty in them and they have as much interaction with the students online as they do in the on-ground courses. Anyway, that on the side. It has 3 tracks: journalist, nonprofit, fundraising and philanthropy, and social justice. This is also going to be able to be accredited through the appropriate body for nonprofit programs. This is a very high demand job. I'll show you on the next slide. Turns out about the 3rd largest industry, or the 3rd largest group of employers in Memphis, Tennessee, is actually nonprofits, about 10%. And they pay a little bit higher than jobs in general in our area. So they're a little bit higher paying jobs, and it's about 10% of the workforce in our area. This actually came to us through ALSAC. ALSAC is well known, probably. It's the most successful fundraising arm for nonprofits in the world, supporting St. Jude Children's Hospital, which is world-renowned, and is also one of the leading employers of the University of Memphis. One of the advantages here is it's not just benefiting their staff members and employees. Very often they come in with a background from something else, maybe biology or whatever else, English, but they are energetic, they want to learn, and they use this for their professional development. So they wanted us to have this. But it's also an opportunity for them to share. ALSAC execs teach in this program and share their practical experience with the students in these programs. So Memphis ranks 1st in the nation of nonprofits per 10,000 residents, 10% of the workforce, I've said, and you recognize some of those names there as doing very, very important work, not just for Memphis and not just for Tennessee, but really impacting children and others around the world. We know that there's an interest in this. First of all, we have our students who are in our concentration or have finished the certificate programs, and those that are in the concentration say that they would prefer a program that's directly tailored to them. Many of those in the certificate program would like to pursue this one. And we've talked to the various nonprofit agencies across our region. There is, as you see, the enrollment revenue projections. Because we have every one of these classes already, we're just packaging them differently, and all of them have capacity for a few more students, especially as it spreads out. Then you'll see that our expenditures are pretty minimal. It's a little bit of marketing. Every once in a while, it'll be an adjunct faculty member to fill in for a full-time faculty that would add a class in this area. And we have our tuition and fees listed there. So this is a little additional cost. It's going to provide opportunities. And a lot of these students, we're confident that those numbers will be made because their employers have told they want us and they will cover the tuition for these students. Happy to entertain any questions you might have or comments.
Questions, Commissioner Stafford?
Not really a question, but just a comment. As someone who sits on the board of nonprofits, I see this very valuable. There is a significant need for qualifications to be increased among nonprofits, and so I think this will do a lot of good.
Thank you. Commissioner Dishner.
I want to also thank you for this creative effort, and I think this is going to be a tremendous addition to our state. I do run a nonprofit, so I'm also pleased to know that salaries are higher in nonprofits in Memphis. I'm going to give you my board chairman's card afterwards, and I'd like you to share that information with him. But seriously, I've grown weary of sending people out of state for this credential. And so, but there's a couple of things that I wanted to ask I know that when you talk about a curriculum in this document, it's a starting point and there's more. But I am curious about, there were at least 3 things that I thought of that I think are a tremendous need for a person who's running a nonprofit. And I know that some of these will be a mammoth nonprofit, but there's going to be a lot of small nonprofits who are going to really benefit from this type of leadership. One of those is the preparation, submission of grants. And I would encourage you to give them experience in grant development, because it's so fundamental to them being able to really propel their work. Secondly, organizational branding. Really helping them to figure out how to brand their organization and to be able to get their message across effectively. Mission development, being mission specific in the work they do and how you develop that mission. And then finally, how to actually establish a foundation. And because I find that there's very little understanding of the different types of opportunities there are to do that with charitables and operating foundations and so forth. So really having a clear understanding of what those are will really help them in the field. And I'm sure you're thinking of all of those things, but I just wanted to share that from my perspective.
Well, first I'd like to say that the first 2 items are actually in the curriculum. We have a grants development and administration that is currently being taught by the grants administrator for the Brooks Museum. And we have nonprofit branding and storytelling, which is a course that was developed by the Chief of Communications for ALSAC. As far as the foundations, the development of foundations, I don't know if that is in the curriculum itself. I don't teach in that curriculum, but we do have our 7643, which is seminar on nonprofit leadership, basically it's a finance course, so it does address some of that at least.
Questions, Mayor Warden?
First, to show me recused on this, but since I have the mic, I will say that ALSAC recently reached iconic status. Everybody recognizes the praying child here, and I do have a few of these pins in my pocket, hoping everything comes out all right here today on this vote. I'm going to be voting. But thank you so much. This is needed so badly. Memphis would be in critically bad shape were it not for the work of the nonprofits. So it's badly needed.
Thank you. And let me use this occasion to, on behalf of the university, to thank ALSAC and all of our nonprofit and for-profit. They came to us. And I don't know how often you've been up in the ALSAC building recently, but as I've been able to be part of this over the last few years, we've had ALSAC up to the very senior leadership was a partnership, telling us precisely these kinds of things out of their experience of what we needed, and then giving us their expertise and sharing it with our students. So what I really like about this is the close partnership that this has with our partners outside of higher ed for the benefit of our community as a whole. And we just got together and said, what does the community need? You tell us how it works, because you're going to help inform those. And so we're very grateful to our partners for informing our academic programs about what the needs are in these various organizations and in our community.
Thank you.
You say it was, who worked with you from outside? Was it Emily?
So, different folks at different levels. So, we worked with Emily, we worked with Diane Heyman, and then our liaison, which we had during the development of this, we had monthly meetings with Simone Montgomery in their leadership development program as well.
Other questions or comments? Floor is open for a motion.
To approve.
Okay, motion for approval, Commissioner Stafford. Was there a second? Treasurer Lillard. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassler,
Aye.
Commissioner Coben,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Watson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wharton,
Accused.
Secretary Hargett,
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 10 ayes and 1 abstention.
Very good. The motion is carried. The program is adopted. Congratulations. Last item on the agenda for action is item 4E, University of Tennessee at Knoxville Geographic Information Science Technology, Bachelor of Science degree.
Good morning, Chairman Cope and commissioners and members of the commission staff. I'm Robert Hindy. I'm the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, appearing here on behalf of and at the request of our Provost, John Zomchik. I'm going to present the proposed new program in Geographic Information Science and Technology, or GIS&T. It's a Bachelor of Science program, a 4-year program consisting of 120 semester credit hours housed in the Department of Geography in our College of Arts and Sciences. The academic program combines a core foundation of instruction in geospatial thinking and data with coursework in mathematics, computer science, and data science that gives students experience in the enabling technologies that underpin geographic information science and technology. And in students' 3rd and 4th years, they're going to gain practical hands-on experience in a variety of areas where the geographic information science and technology applies to different industry sectors such as transportation, logistics, emergency management, agriculture, and urban planning. This educational experience is going to prepare students to for workforce opportunities in the GIS&T industry, which is one of the fastest growing fields both regionally and nationally in terms of job availability. And it's a curriculum that we designed to attract both traditional college students and adult learners who want to change careers. The degree aligns with the state master plan and with the institutional mission. The alignment with the state master plan is associated with the curriculum focus on a rapidly growing industry in the state of Tennessee and in neighboring regions, the geospatial technology industry. The U.S. Department of Labor estimates that this industry will grow at a 35% rate over the next decade, and it includes both public and private sector employment opportunities for graduates. Also, the proposed degree program aligns with the state master plan through the development of new workforce opportunities for graduates from the university, preparing Tennesseans to take employment positions in the GIS&T industry. The degree program articulates with the University of Tennessee Knoxville mission to serve the state and the people of Tennessee, both through this workforce development, as well as fostering outreach and engagement with the community, because a large number of employment opportunities in this area are associated with public service agencies and state and local government offices. The demand for the program is supported both by surveys of current and prospective students, as well as letters of support from state and local government agencies, and both for-profit and nonprofit entities in the private sector. Forbes magazine highlighted that the field of GIS&T has a limitless future, and this is supported by the Department of Labor statistics that I quoted earlier. And Secretary Hargett, if you're curious, the picture that we're showing is because that's the geography building, which is where the department is housed. The degree program also supports the University of Tennessee Knoxville's close linkage with Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the nation's largest open science laboratory. More than 200 UT faculty members have joined appointments with Oak Ridge National Laboratory, including 4 members of the geography department. And the linkage with Oak Ridge National Laboratory is going to help the department provide students with internships at Oak Ridge, working with Oak Ridge scientists in order to prepare them for the workforce. So it's a win-win both for the institution and for the laboratory. This chart shows the financial and enrollment projections for the first 5 years of the program. The additional expenditures associated with delivering the program are minimal because many of the courses already exist in the geography department. The program breaks even in the first year with these estimated enrollments and revenues, so the program will be completely supported by tuition and fee revenues paid by the students in the program. We anticipate our first graduating class of 6 students in spring of 2025. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dr. Hendy. Questions for Dr. Hendy? Great job. Thank you very much.
Move approval of the item.
Yes, sir. Motion to approve. Treasurer Lillard, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Scarlett with the second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Cope,
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner, Commissioner Hassler, Commissioner Coben,
Aye.
Commissioner Moser,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Watson, Commissioner Wharton,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard, Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairman, you have 11 ayes.
Very good. The motion is carried and the program is approved. Congratulations. Last item on our agenda is item number 5, legislative update. The man we've all been waiting to hear from, Lou.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commission members, Dr. House, appreciate the opportunity to be here. I fully plan to be done by 11:30 this evening. And no, first session of the 112th General Assembly wrapped up, a few weeks ago, and arguably it was a good year for higher education, in that a lot of things got done. And we'll certainly talk somewhat about that. But with every new General Assembly comes a few new faces and a little bit new structure. That's certainly true this year, particularly on the House side of things. House Higher Education Subcommittee looked a lot different, with 5 members who'd never before been on education, let alone higher education, and a new chairman of that subcommittee, Representative Justin Lafferty out of Knoxville. That being said, they were very thoughtful. They got their work done in short order and were, really good to work with. Other than that, as many of you know, we saw Senator Dolores Gresham retire. Senator Brian Kelsey took the helm of the Senate Education Committee and did an admirable job on that front. Legislation. In any given year, we look at about 2,000 to 3,000 bills come before the General Assembly. 150 or so have some impact on higher education. But really, if you dig down a little deeper, that looks like probably about 15 or 20 bills that really truly impact how higher education operates, how THEC operates. And then, of course, there are all of the state employee and insurance and workers' comp related things that kind of pile on to this agency in particular as state employees. With regard to legislation that came this year, THEC put forward 3 pieces of legislation. And I realized I didn't have the opportunity to give you an update last year, but we did move the Financial Aid for Simplification for Tennesseans Act, which was an overhaul of our financial aid language throughout the code. Embedded in that bill in its original form were several provisions to help out certain student populations with language clarifications, and in some cases expanding their access to financial aid, particularly within the Hope Scholarship programs. 2 of those were brought back this year. All of them were dropped out of the bill last year because of the appropriations bill kind of emergency. We dropped out all new expenditures. This year, 2 of the pieces came back. This would be this first item relative to homeschool students. Homeschool students historically have had to provide at least 1 prior year of homeschool eligibility before being eligible for things like Hope Scholarship. Well, as we know, many students leave in their senior year for a number of reasons, right? This gives them an opportunity to have a proxy. Well, one, we dropped the 1-year requirement, but in the absence of having a GPA from a high school, we allow them to take a couple of dual enrollment classes showing career readiness or college readiness as a proxy for that grade point average. It's not a huge cost, but we noticed over the last few years a number of student inquiries of homeschool students losing the opportunity to pursue post-secondary with a Hope Scholarship. This remedies that for them. I would refer you to the 3rd bill really quickly. This is the other provision that was addressed out of the FAST Act last year, Helping Heroes grants. This is the part of the Hope Scholarship that we focus on veterans. And one, we removed the $750,000 cap on that program to allow for expansions due to the other provisions, which is we expanded the number of military campaigns for which veterans are eligible and also removed the 8-year time frame to complete. We hope to see that program grow. Currently, it's not maxing out that 750, but we'd like to see it get there eventually. The other bill was actually a bill that THEC brought to consolidate a number of our reports. As you know, over the last 20 or 30 years, we've been piling on reports in the code that THEC produces. This helps us clarify, certainly partially, when some of those are due to get closer to real-time data to the legislature and the administration, but also consolidates a number of reports, particularly around supply and demand. In the last year, and Dr. House referenced this in her opening comments, we've been partnering more and more with ECD and with the Department of Labor and other agencies. Well, we produce reports with all of those groups, individual reports. This allows us all to kind of centralize that into a single report with all partners having some say and some input. In addition to that, the state, we produce the land grant report on the land grant funding. We are formally pulling that into the Higher Education Fact Book, which kind of gives it a little bit more gravitas and permanence, but also puts it in front of both the administration and the legislature in an annual way. 2 pieces of legislation in particular that I want to highlight. One, completion grants, and this has certainly been on THEC's radar for a number of years. I know Dr. Gentile has been kind of pounding the pulpit on this, but also, you know, this is a practice that many of our institutions have put into place in some way or another. 3 years ago, Representative Scott Cepicky came with ideas about how to address retention rates in Tennessee Promise, and so we partnered with some of the folks over at Tennessee Achieves to think through kind of what is a good model. We went with completion grants tied to the COMPLETE program, which is our strategic coaching initiative. High touch, high advising, high mentoring for about 2,800 students across the state. This will provide them kind of the spontaneous emergency micro grants, things that would derail them from enrolling from one semester to the next. Oddly enough, keeping them in one more semester makes them stay in for one more semester, closer to retention, closer to persistence. A lot of shout outs on this bill. Again, it's been a 3-year process. SCORE was heavily involved in advocating for this, the Tennessee Business Roundtable, and of course, Tennessee Achieves. All were huge partners in getting this done, and to the sponsors, Representative Cepicky and Senator Hensley. Also, House Bill 1246, Senate Bill 1521, the Student Right to Know Act, which started out, I think, as more of an accountability piece, but really became an opportunity for THEC to step in and take advantage of some incredible work going on with our Gear Up team. They are overhauling the College for TN web platform. which is predominantly informational for students. We plan to make it an incredible utility tool for students and their families making decisions about not just where they want to go to college, how much will it cost, but what are the career outcomes that they can pursue long term? How does that intersect with opportunities in the military? You know, there's really no end to the kinds of things we can fold into this instrument to make it more intuitive and more useful to parents and students as they make decisions about where to go. So really appreciate the sponsors on this legislation to get that through. This next piece of legislation was actually brought by Treasurer Lillard and his team. This is to wind down the BEST plan. This is the Education Services Plan. This is one of the, buying down tuition credits preemptively and then using them when it's time to go on to post-secondary. With the success of the TN STARS 529 plan and other approaches to funding your higher education and the dwindling number of beneficiaries, they decided to go ahead and wind that down expeditiously with a couple of different options, as you can see there. Would certainly defer to the Treasurer if he has any additional thoughts, but largely seen as the appropriate way to kind of move that wind down forward. This next bill is actually a piece of legislation that did not pass, but raised a serious issue and resulted in a formal letter from Senator Lundberg to the Higher Education Commission. The legislation would have required the full funding for materials and supplies for Tennessee Promise students. So this is textbooks. And really at the heart of this is, what we all know to be the case, which is textbook costs are a factor in a student's attending post-secondary. And interestingly enough, all of our institutions, and particularly TBR, has done a lot of work in this space. Moving towards open education resources, looking at bulk buying. We've seen several pilot programs over the years, but really no consolidation of all of that thought into kind of a single report. So Senator Lundberg has asked for us to partner with the institutions and the system offices and any other interested parties, particularly vendors who are specializing in consolidation of textbooks and materials in an online platform, to kind of develop some best practices and some thoughts around how do we make this more affordable for students. Again, more to come on that, as it is one of our projects for this summer, and we plan to move forward with that pretty quickly. The cost. The way the cost factor was established, it would have pulled full funding for it at roughly $30 to $40 million directly out of Tennessee Promise's account. And while we could have some discussion about what would be the proper cost center to do that, one of the whereas clauses in the legislation was an affirmation that textbook costs shouldn't be the prohibiting factor for a student pursuing post-secondary. And while I think theoretically that should be true, there's some caution about whether or not the state should absolutely be the one responsible for covering textbook costs, as opposed to the state really incenting institutions to be good actors and thinkers in terms of minimizing textbook costs, but also taking advantage of all of the technology we've heard talked about today in various forms. There's a lot of work, really quality work being done right now. And I think that, certainly in a future meeting, we would be able to speak to some of the things going on in that space.
How many of our courses across the state do you think are offered with online textbooks? What's the percentage use of technology?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I know that we do have some folks here. Dr. Roberts, I know, has been involved with Tennessee Board of Regents. There is a working task force on this issue. I know from a former life with the University of Tennessee, they are doing a lot of work in this space also. I'm even going so far as thinking through what are some degree tracks that can be put entirely into an open education resource forum. The actual percentage, I think that we could probably get back to you on that, if there is such a number right now.
Is there some hesitancy to actually stop with the big heavy books and the backpacks? Are we going to stay?
I'm not 100% sure the big heavy textbooks is the real issue. It's really the cost and the boundaries, you know, that could be placed on academic freedom and faculty choice over the textbooks that guide the content of their coursework. I think that there's probably a lot of thought around, are there some areas of higher education, particularly in gen ed, where you could think through, okay, a biology textbook is the biology textbook for all biology students. I think we could probably see something on that horizon, but I think the real discussion is around ownership of the curriculum and the content in each course, and how do we universalize that through open education resources. Questions? Just a few more here. I know, try to be conscious of your time again. Don't want to stand between you and a ride home. Lottery legislation, of course, we always see lottery legislation. You know, this year with some kind of tweaks and adjustments here. The first is for our middle college scholarship students, raising that award from $1,000 to $1,250. And speaking with the sponsors year over year about this, as you probably know, this is the third or fourth time we've seen an adjustment. Their goal is to ultimately make the middle college scholarship comparable to the Hope Award. These are students who are essentially in higher education full-time, concurrently with their high school pursuits. So that's their goal on that space. The addition of William R. Moore College of Technology is an eligible institution for dual enrollment. The driver behind that is a recent dual enrollment agreement that they have with the Memphis City Schools. And then finally, an adjustment to the dual enrollment grant awards. If you remember, a few years ago, the GIVE Act expanded dual enrollment to cover 4 courses, fees and everything at the career and technical schools, the TCATs. This would actually expand a similar model of tuition and fees for 4 dual enrollment courses for all institutions. One quick comment here, all of our 6 LGIs, those part of the Focus Act, have now had and gone through a full sunset cycle, appearing before GovOps, and you see here the sunset dates, which all higher ed institutions have, as well as state agencies. And so, certainly those performance audits and whatnot are certainly available through the comptroller's website. It was a pretty comprehensive process, and I think that, they're welcome to the club in a lot of ways.
Hey, Lee, if you don't mind going back, I just noticed, why is there a difference in the sunset dates on some of the schools?
So in the performance audits, there were findings and recommendations, and would certainly offer the comptroller space to jump in here. But largely the decisions that were being made were based on the substance of those findings. And a lot of them had to do with some federal reporting, as well as some financial mechanisms and instruments in place on the campuses. The degree, and some of those are just about scale. Were the findings, did the findings constitute, 40% compliance versus 60% compliance and so forth. And so what you're seeing here is the General Assembly saying, we recognize you're doing work in this space, you're working towards reconciling these findings. We want you to come back a little sooner, just show us you're doing, the right work in this space, and then we kind of take the next step with your subsequent audit.
Thanks, yeah, thank you.
Just a few other pieces here. These are broader higher education impact legislation, one around our education provider programs. This was a bill that had a lot of attention focused on it. We often hear conversations around offering alternative licensure and alternative endorsement for teachers to come in, addressing teacher shortage. We often get uncomfortable in the higher education space around things that circumvent the traditional education curriculum. This one, I think in the final analysis, it does require an assessment for persons who are leaving one content area to take up teaching in another content area. So while I don't know that all parties were happy with it, this was probably the best resolution to come out of that issue. Student athletes, this has been an issue ongoing and will likely be ongoing to some respect or another. This is around name, image, and likeness. It creates certain allowances for persons to pursue compensation. for the use of their name in a private way, not necessarily representing institutions. There are some boundaries placed into the language. I'm by no means an expert on this, as we were observers of the process from the outside, but it does impact, all of our campuses with student athletes. Graduate medical education, again, not a space THEC is typically involved in. There is an appropriation this year, which moves about $5.5 million through us onto UT, ETSU, and LMU for the purpose of opening up new residency slots throughout the state. Different intents behind those buckets of money, but the goal here is to open up additional opportunities for graduates from our medical schools, irrespective of your institution, but opportunities for them to go and finish, kind of polish off what they learned in school and become practicing professionals. This next one is really an extension of a previous law, but also this puts some the ability around campuses to hold search committees and do some of that work behind closed doors, both to protect the information of those applying for these jobs, but also to ensure that there's some confidentiality about finalists and interview processes and so forth. And then finally, tuition discounts and waivers. There wouldn't be a legislative session if we didn't talk about tuition discounts and waivers. Unlike previous years, this one actually puts funding boundaries around future bills, which again, we're in year one, we're going into year two, which means it only has a lifetime of 1 year. Basically says if you're going to pass a bill on tuition discounts, you have to fully fund it. Here's really a 10,000-foot view of the appropriations. Major impacts here: capital outlay, the number of buildings funded, with ETSU receiving planning funds for their academic building. Most of these were in the original budget with the addition of TCAT Shelbyville. Should note that there were a couple of other TCAT capital infusions, a part of what Dr. House referred to as the TCAT waitlist resolution plan coming from the Commissioner of F&A. A testament to the work done here at this agency around the GIFT grant programs, Spark. Certainly a shout out to Mitch Curry and Brandon Hudson on this respect. A really serious investment in those two programs to see continued collaboration around the state. Again, completion grants tied to that program with our partnering organizations in Tennessee Promise, and then of course the GME fiscal infusion. Happy to answer any questions. Again, every bill has a story, but we're bound by time. So,
questions?
And a few members have asked for these slides. I will send them out after we wrap today.
Mr. Dishner.
Really more information. Going back to the dual enrollment piece, we know that if a student participates in dual enrollment or an AP course, in other words, gets that first taste of post-secondary experience while they're still in high school, they're going to be much more likely to go on to post-secondary if they can see that success. Our state has made monumental strides in that, and the dual enrollment piece is extremely important, providing those 4 courses. But we were talking about textbooks just a few moments ago. Again, a decisive point is that underserved students are not going to be able to afford the textbook. So even though we're providing the dual enrollment course, their decision might have to be to not try that dual enrollment course because they can't. So our ability to think about that in ways, perhaps not to provide textbooks to all, but what can we do for underserved students to be able to give them that opportunity? The state's also taken a major step with AP, and for the next 2 years, virtual AP courses are going to be available free of charge to all Tennessee high school students through ESSER funds. Very proud that the Niswonger Foundation is actually the partner in that work. And they'll also be able to take the test for free. That is a huge step for our state. But that textbook piece with dual enrollment is going to be a real issue. So that's just something we need to keep in mind.
Questions or comments, Secretary Hargis?
I got a comment.
Yes,
Lou, I just want to thank you for how well you represent us in the Cordell Hall building, and how many times you let me call you and pick your brain and find out different things that you're hearing. And I'm sure others in this room and who are watching online or on the phone have had that same experience with you. So just thank you.
Sir, well, I can tell you, when you walk into that building with 115 or 130 people, truly some of the smartest people in the state, if not the country, providing you all the information you need to speak intelligently about things, that's a huge boon. So, but thank you for that, but it's really a thank you to them.
Great. Thank you, Lou.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're at the end of our agenda. I don't know, Dr. House, if you have any closing comments or...
I really don't. I was just going to thank Lou as well. No one works harder than Lou Hanneman, January through April. So thank you to Lou, as always. It was wonderful to see everybody in person. We do have some follow-ups from some of the sidebars that we've had, as well as some of the texts I've received since being up here. So please watch your inbox, watch your phone for any follow-ups from our team. And make sure you eat. Croissant's in the back with lunch. And with that, Mr. Chair, if there's nothing else from you, that's all I have.
I just have one question.
Sure.
What does Lou do from April through January?
We don't keep track of Lou during that time. Yeah.
Okay, with that, our next
Thank you
meeting
all.
is July 22nd, and I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
I couldn't resist.